Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to make the Oh My blanket. It's a free pattern that you can find on mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be showing you the basic stitch pattern that I used for this blanket and may use for rowed patterns in the future. But if you want to know exactly how to begin the blanket, how many chains, how many rows, what sizes you can make, then you definitely want to go to mooglyblog.com and look for the Oh My blanket to get the full pattern. If you're on YouTube, there will also be a link in the description. So let's begin. This pattern is made with Lion Brand Heartland. I used 4 colors, although you can use as many colors as you like. These particular ones are Great Sand Dunes, Olympic, Glacier Bay, and Pinnacles. And it uses a USK hook. That is a 6.5 millimeter. This particular one is made by Furls. So let me set this aside and we'll take a quick look at the finished blanket. Okay, here we have the finished Oh My blanket. Obviously, this is a close-up. We can't quite pull back enough to show the whole thing on camera, but it's basically there's the border, and it's just these rows over and over again throughout the blanket. And again, if you want to know how many stitches to begin with or how many rows, you'll find that info on mooglyblog.com. Now, this pattern does call for a multiple of 8 plus 2 and has a 4-row repeat. So that's what I'll be showing you today. So let's get this out of the way and begin actually crocheting this pattern. Okay, now as I just mentioned, this pattern calls for a multiple of 8 plus 2. So I have started with a chain. We're in a close-up here, so it's hard to get it all in, but I've started with a chain of 26, which is 8 times 3 plus 2. So we'll be making a little swatch size today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the chain closest to the hook and single crochet in the chain after that. As you can see, I like to work into the back hump of the chain when I'm working into the chain, but that's just personal preference. You can work into whatever part of the chain you prefer. So after that, I'm going to skip 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and work a big shell in the chain after that. The big shell for this pattern is 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets, all worked into the same stitch. So that's 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and pause if you need to catch up. 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets again, all worked into that same chain. And throughout the pattern, big shell will always be 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets worked into the same stitch. Oops. Let's try that again. There we go. And if you haven't worked a double crochet before, then you're going to yarn over, go into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. So that's our first big shell. Now you can see it's a little wobbly down here, but we're going to work a border at the end of the blanket that will cover all that up and make it a lot more sturdy. So to continue, after our big shell, we'll we'll skip 3, no chaining, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet in the next chain. And that is basically our repeat. Whoops, not a slip stitch. Accidentally pulled it right on through there, didn't I? Let's try that again. There we go, single crochet. Then we skip 3 more, 1, 2, 3, work another big shell right in there. And you may recall I just mentioned that it's a multiple of 8, and I did 8 times 3. Well, that means we're going to get 3 big shells. So that's another way to know you're always on track. So we're working on our second one here. We've got 4 double crochets, chain 1, and 4 double crochets right back in that same stitch. There's 2, 3, and 4. And then, of course, again, pull my yarn out straight a little bit here. We skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet in the one after that. Now, if I chained correctly, we should have skip 3, another big shell. There we go. Just making sure I actually chained correctly there for a second before I keep going, but I did. So big shell here, 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets, right back in that same stitch there. 1, 2, 3. I just put lotion on my hands so they wouldn't be all dry for the video, and now they're a little slippery. Sorry about that. There we go, 4. Okay, so that's our last big shell, because remember, we're just going to have 3. So we should have 4 chains left, and we do. Hooray! So we go 1, 2, 3, skip those, and put our single crochet right in the last chain there. There we are. And that is the end of row 1. Now, row 1 here is a little bit of a setup row. The 4-row repeat will actually be rows 2 through 5. So we're going to build off these. Now, when I make this pattern, I like to switch colors at this point. So rather than finishing that last single crochet with this color, what I will do, let me pull that single crochet back out. I'm going to go into that single crochet there, pull up a loop, and then I'm going to finish the single crochet by yarning over and pulling through with our next color. So let me pull that one up here. And that one is the Olympic colorway. So I'll pull up some yarn here. And we'll get started on row 2. Now, like I said, at the end of row 1, I will yarn over, and I want to leave a good tail here because I don't want it to pull out as I'm working. So I'll yarn over with that and pull that through there. And that finishes the stitch with our new color, and we're ready to begin with the second color. If you get nervous about this pulling out as you work, you can always work a very simple little knot, not a double knot, you'd want to do a single knot with these 2 yarns together just to hold it in place, because you'll want to take that out later as you continue your crocheting. But for now, we're going to go ahead and begin by chaining 3 and turning, or turning and chaining 3, however you prefer to do it. And that chain 3 right there, let me pull these a little tighter. There we go. That chain 3 is going to count as our first double crochet of the row. So then I'm going to double crochet in the first stitch here. So it counts as 2 double crochets total, right there, 1, 2. And then after that, I will chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And as you may have noticed, I like to, well, for lack of a better term, we'll use a baseball term. I like to choke up on my chains as I go. This helps me keep the chains really even, so it might work for you too if you have trouble with that. So after I've chained 5, I'm going to skip that whole big shell, and I'm going to work a V-stitch in the single crochet. Now a V-stitch is a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That's how I'm using it in this pattern. Now for different patterns, if you see the term V-stitch, you'll always want to check the special stitches section because it can be different things in different patterns. But this is a pretty standard version. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all worked into that single crochet. And then we're beginning our repeat. We chain 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yarn over, skip that whole next shell, come over to the single crochet in between the shells, and work our V-stitch there. So you'll have as many V-stitches as you have single crochets between the shells, plus you've got those 2 double crochets at this end, and of course we're going to end with 2 double crochets on this end to keep it even. So not quite a V-stitch, there's no chain 1 in between, but you always want to chain 5 to go over those big shells. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip that last big shell, and we'll work 2 double crochets at the end of row 2, and that's how we end that row. So, whoops, there's 1, and there's 2. Now, like I said, I like to change colors, but I'm not going to change colors yet. I'm going to come back the other direction with this color so that I get a row of big shells in this dark blue. So, to do that, first I start by chaining 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I guess you could say in a way it's really changing colors every 2 rows. It feels like 1 row because their rows of big shells are what you see, but really it's every 2 rows. Except for that first row, that's just a setup row. So that chain 4 we just did is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. 1, 2, 3, that's our double crochet, 4 for chain 1. Then we are going to work 4 double crochets in that first stitch. The last stitch we made of the previous row is the first stitch for this round, so 4 double crochets all worked right in that space. And this is sort of like a half big shell. If you think about it, our big shells are 4 double crochet, chain 1, 4 double crochet. This one's just going to be 1 double crochet, chain 1, 4 double crochet. And that gives us a sort of half shell that gives us our nice straight sides. It might stick out a little bit at this point, but it'll straighten up as you continue with the pattern too. So there's our first half shell. And then from here, what we're going to do is come over to the chain 1 space of the big shell, insert our hook there, go around or under that chain 5 because we want to enclose it in this stitch, and work a single crochet. And pull it so that the chain 5 is nice and snug on top of or behind the big shell, and work our single crochet. And that, you can see, is how these start fitting together. So let's move to the next one. We are going to work a big shell in the chain 1 space of the V-stitch. So the big shell again is 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets. So there's 2, 3, 4. And I'm going through those a little bit quickly, I know, because you probably know how to make double crochets if you're going to try this blanket. So if you need to pause to catch up, that's always fine. Let's see, there's 3 and 4. Okay, so there's our next big shell, all worked in that chain 1 space. And yeah, it pushes it apart a little bit, but that's okay. It's part of the pattern. So from there, we're ready to do another one of those enclosing stitches. Go into the chain 1 space of the next big shell. It's actually 2 rows below. Go under, make sure you're not leaving it out. You don't want this hanging off the back of your blanket. So make sure you get that on top of your hook too. And then yarn over, like so. And that will enclose that chain 5 in the stitch and make your single crochet. So you can see it's starting to come together already. Let's do our last repeat for this row. We do 5 double crochets, or excuse me, we don't do 5 double crochets. We do a big shell in the chain 1 space of the next V-stitch. So there's, how many did I end up doing here? 1, 2, 3, 4, chain 1, then 4 more. And because we're working these in between the shells of the setup row, of course, we will only have 2 big shells, but then we'll have those half shells on the sides. So after our big shell, once again, into the chain 1 space, single crochet, enclosing that chain 5, and then in the top of the chain 3, remember we had a chain 3 that counted as a double crochet right here? So we want to go into the top of that chain 3 and treat it just as a double crochet and work our last half shell. So since this one's facing the other direction, we're going to do 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a chain 1 and 1 more double crochet after that. Now, I'm not going to quite finish that because this is where I want to add my third color. Or if you're only using 2 colors, this is where you'd switch back to the first color. So if I lay it out, you can see we're starting to establish our pattern here. Now, carrying the yarn along the sides, this is something I get a lot of questions about because I don't want to have to cut the yarn every 2 rows. I'm sure you don't either. That makes for a lot of ends to weave in, and that's rarely people's favorite part. So what I would do is before I even make this last double crochet, I would yarn over, go into the stitch just as before, and then what I would do, I'm not so worried about this first end of the blue, that's going to get woven in, but I want to keep the working end of the tan color here available for later. So what I would do is I would go ahead and lay that over my hook. Excuse me, I grabbed the wrong one. Let me try that again. The working end laid over the hook, and then I would enclose that. Let me try and pull it back into focus here. There we go. I would enclose that when I go in and pull up my loop. And you can see that's going to hold it right along the side. You don't want to pull too hard on that end. It will make the side of the blanket squinch up. And you don't want it to be too loose or you're going to have a bunch of loops off to the side. So it takes a little bit of practice to get it just right. But for now, we don't have to worry too much about it because we're not working with it yet. So it'll adjust. Let's grab that working blue end again, right there. Pull through the first 2. And you can see that one's moving up the side. Yes, you can see it in back, but when we make our border, that will get covered up. So let's find our third color here. This one would be the Glacier Bay colorway right there. You can see this was actually my leftovers from when I finished the blanket. So pull up some yarn here. Find my end again. Where did it go? There we are. All right, getting myself a little tangled. There we go. So with that one, again, you want to leave a nice long tail so that it doesn't get pulled out accidentally. Yarn over with it. Just put it right over the end of your hook there and pull it through. And you're ready to start crocheting with that one. Sometimes, too, it can help to keep it a little secured if you actually oddly flip the end over the working yarn before you start chaining, and that can help trap that end a little bit too. So what we're beginning here is actually row 4 of the pattern. It's the third row of our 4-row repeat. I'm going to pull that down tight again so it isn't terribly loose, and I'm going to start with just a chain 1. So turning to work back the other way, I'm going to make a single crochet in the first stitch. So that's right there. Remember, we had a chain 1, double crochet. So we want to go in there and make our single crochet, like so. And like I say, if these start pulling up, just pull down on those working ends a little bit. That'll tighten things up. And we don't have to worry about those till we come back to this side. Now from here, we are going to do a chain 2 because we only have half of a shell to skip over. So we chain 2. And then we go back to that single crochet in between the big shells and we make our next V-stitch. You don't have to worry about trying to enclose the chain 1, or excuse me, the chain 5 that's enclosed in that single crochet. Just go ahead and go under the top 2 loops of that single crochet right there. You can see the chain 5 under it there, right there. But we want to go just under those top 2 loops. So we work our V-stitch, which is again just a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, like so. And then it's back to basically the same thing as before. Chain 5, skip the big shell, V-stitch. Chain 5, skip the big shell, V-stitch. But of course we have to handle the end a little differently because the previous row of big shells ended with half shells. So was that 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it's time to skip that big shell and do another V-stitch right there. If you do happen to catch that chain 5 that you enclosed previously and you don't notice it till later, it really doesn't make a big difference. I think I probably did it a couple times while I was making the blanket. You don't have to frog it out. You're not going to be able to visually tell. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 chains. Time for that V-stitch in the next single crochet. These V-stitch rows, let me try that again. These V-stitch rows do go quite quickly. Easier done than said. So we're back down to the end. So we're going to chain 2. And then we're going to single crochet in the third chain. Remember, we had 4 chains. Double crochet in a chain 1 is how they counted. So we want to find the third one, since that acts as the top of our double crochet, and make our single crochet right there. And then it's time to turn back the other way and make another row of big shells. So to do that, this one is going to be an awful lot like our setup row, in that we'll have 3 big shells again, but of course we'll be working into the stitches rather than the chains. So after chaining 1, we work a single crochet in the first stitch. I'm going to yarn over because I know next is a big shell in that chain 1 space. The big shell, one more time, is 4 double crochets followed by a chain 1 and 4 more double crochets. So that's 4, chain 1, and 4 more, all in that chain 1 space. So that's 2, 3, and 4. There we are. And then we go to that next chain 1 space of that previous big shell, put our hook in there. Make sure again you go under that chain 5. That's something you definitely don't want to miss. Yarn over, pull it up and single crochet, and then another big shell in the next chain 1 of the next V-stitch. Not the next big shell. You never work a big shell directly into a big shell. You always work the big shells into the V-stitches. So that's 4, chain 1, and then 4 more. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then come over to our next big shell, insert in the chain 1 space, make sure you've got the chain 5 enclosed, pull up your loop, yarn over, and pull through to finish the single crochet, and we've got one more V-stitch, so one more big shell. Now, as you noticed before, there are 3 big shells in the first row, so in this repeat there will be 3 big shells here. And they just go back and forth like that. The rows with 1 fewer big shell will always have 2 big shells on the ends. Well, 1 on each end. So there's 3 and 4. There we are, our last big shell here. See, it's come together pretty well. So we finish this one with a single crochet in that last single crochet there. Now, once again, we want to make sure to pull our unused colors up along the side until we're ready to use them again. So now, and this is where I have to kind of sort through. These are both short ends, so I put those out to the side. I'm going to pull this one down because this is another short end. I don't care about that one, but I need the blue and the tan to come up and be ready for when they're ready. So I'll put those over my hook, grab the working end of our blue yarn. Let me pull that around, pulling it from the wrong side. There we go. And that's the only one I want to work with. I just want to trap. Let me pull that, sorry, back to the middle here. I just want to trap those along the side. So just by pulling that medium blue on through, we've trapped, if you can see, those colors I pulled up along the side, and they'll be ready to use later. And if you feel like you've pulled those a little too tight, see like this, and it's starting to bunch, just go ahead and pull them out. There you go. And sometimes I'll even give them a little tug and pull them a little too tight and give then a tug back the other way so that they're long enough without being too long so that they create loops along the side. And then again, when you work the border, you can cover all that right up. So at this point in the original pattern, I would go ahead and change colors again to our palest blue right here. This one was the Pinnacles colorway. And I would do that the same way by yarning over and pulling through with this new color. And then after that set of 2 rows, we'd do another row of V-stitches and then big shells back. It would be time to go ahead and start using this one again. So you can see, you just kind of trade as you go up the sides. But we've made our 4-row repeat. 2 rows in the dark blue and 2 rows in the medium blue give us our 4-row repeat. So the next 2 rows would be just like the dark blue, and then the next 2 rows would be just like the medium blue. So no matter how many colors you're using, that's going to be the 4 rows you go back and forth on. It's just a matter of how many colors you want to change out. If you're using more than 4 colors, you may not want to carry them along the side. At that point, it's going to get quite thick because you're going to be enclosing more and more strands every time you do that. I feel like up to 3 is about a good number. Like I say, beyond that, it does start to get a little obvious. Let me show you just really quickly about the border. When I pull up this one, we'll pretend it's a 3-color blanket. So I'll go ahead and go back to the tan. And I'll pull that one up to finish. Now, there is a finish row that you would do across the top that is in the instructions. It's just another V-stitch row, and then you work into the V-stitch with single crochets. So with the written pattern, I don't think I need to show you that part. Again, go to the written pattern. But for the border, I just want to show you how well this works to cover these up. This isn't really going to be a great border. It's not finished blanket. But if I work, let me pull these loose ones out of the way, and I'm just going to cover up the ones we pulled up along the side here. And if I just go around all of those from the side here, like so, and come down here, and I'll just go ahead and work right around the whole stitch. I know a lot of times it works better to go into the stitch, and if you prefer it that way, you can do it. But for this blanket, I wanted to go ahead and make a little bit chunkier border, so I just went ahead and went around the whole stitch here. I find on average it works well to work 2 single crochets around a double crochet when making a border, but you may need to adjust that for your own tension. So we've got 2 there. I know this is another row of double crochet, or chain 3, as the case may be. So I'll go in wherever it makes sense. I just try to be consistent as I work. And as I get to the end there, I would work 1 more because this is a single crochet row, so I'll just put 1 there. And you can see from the front, you can't tell at all that I was carrying those stitches along. And from the back, it's really not that noticeable either. In fact, let's go ahead and pull the finished blanket back up. So you can see here, this is the border on the finished blanket. It's just a simple row of single crochets followed by a little more decorative row that gives it a little more finished edge. The final round of the border is basically single crochet and double crochet in a stitch, skip a stitch, single crochet and double crochet in the next. Just gives it a little bit of texture along the edge. So this is actually the side of the finished blanket that I carried my unused yarns along. You can see this is the front. It looks fantastic. Let me flip it over. And this is how it looks from behind. If you look very closely, you can see I'm carrying the blue along here, but I really don't feel that this is that noticeable at all, especially for those who don't crochet. And honestly, once it's finished, I think it blends in quite well. Makes it look pretty nice. And this is the wrong side of the blanket anyway. From the front, you can't see it at all. So I think it works pretty well. And that is how you make the Oh My blanket using a K-hook and Lion Brand Heartland. So I hope this video helped you out if you'd like to make the Oh My blanket. If you liked it, please do give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching.